Having a Gas is the podcast that talks the great and the good of the creative industries, and in particular finds out what makes great music for film, for TV, for commercials, for dancing to, for cooking to, for f***ing to, and more. Today I'm having a gas with Andy Nairn, one of the co-founders of Lucky Generals. Now, Andy has a strategy background, but he has written a new book called Go Look Yourself, about how to better position yourself to be the recipient of good fortune. And Andy told me all about it recently. Andy, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. It's really great to be here.
Was that a reasonable summary?
That was a fantastic summary. I should get you to do all my preambles and set up every time I have to do this sort of thing.
I'll just turn up like a wizard with a little curtain. So so I'm looking forward to talking about the book, and it's quite an interesting hypothesis to dig into. But first of all, tell me how the last year has been for you. We're almost coming up on our 1-year anniversary of COVID being a real problem and not just a trivial background noise. How's it been? Well, like everybody, I suppose we've had ups and downs. I mean, personally, I have been insulated from the worst things. You know, our family's been well, which is the main thing, obviously, that one thinks about. The business has been doing well, all things considered. So, lots of people have had it much, worse than I have or we have. But it's still, it's not been enjoyable. I'm not one of these people. Much though, I do like spending a little bit of time at home, and it's nice to spend some time with the family and all the rest of it. I do miss the office as well, and sort of working with, with all our mates really, and our little gang. Doing things creatively is harder when you're in separate places, I still think. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It reminded me of a quote from the filmmaker Kevin Smith when he went to pitch to Miramax, of course, controversially run by Harvey Weinstein. But he said, they were trying to bring on a load of talent, a load of A-listers, and he's saying, no, I've got my mate Ben Affleck and I've got my mate Jay. And they said, Kevin, it's not about making a movie with your friends. And he said, well, that's all I want to do, really. And is that what you guys set out to do with Lucky Generals? Well, yes, I guess in a way it was. We had an advantage in that. So there's two other founders who are both my long-standing friends, and that was definitely our relationship is obviously very professional, but also we are mates, and we really like each other's company, enjoy spending time with each other, and have fun. And we had all worked with each other for quite a long time. Other agencies have been successful, but crucially had enjoyed it. I think life was too short to sort of slog it out with people you don't like working with. And obviously there are lots of people who are incredibly talented that you just don't really particularly enjoy working with. And so we set out to have a good time as well as to, be successful in the more obvious ways. And I think that sort of worked its way through the rest of the culture. We have hired people that we think will enhance the greater good, the fun and the culture of the place. That's been so crucial to us, and I think has got us through the worst of some of these terrible things that have been going on in the last 12 months. Great. So that's where we are now. Why don't you take me through a little bit of how you came to be a founder of this agency? Sorry. What happened before that? When did you get into the industry and what brought you into it? Well, I fell into the industry by fluke. I mean, like a lot of people probably. I mean, I had certainly no intention or sort of interest in terms of advertising. It wasn't on my radar. And I did law at university. I sort of partly because I couldn't think of what to do there either, but I thought law is quite a general thing that you can do that looks good in a CV. So I did law. I really enjoyed it, actually. I really liked sort of taking a problem and then trying to find the best expression of it, the best answer. You're putting a client's case forward. But I didn't fancy the idea of doing it sort of in such a corporate world that, kind of see friends becoming quite sort of corporate in that space and having to go off in suits and all the rest of it. So I sort of confided in a law lecturer, and just by sheer good chance, he was an amazing person, a lovely person who's now very famous. He's an author called Alexander McCall Smith, and he's sold tens of millions of books. Wow. Which is quite a lot more than I expect I'll be selling. So he's a proper mega best-selling author of the ladies' detective agency, set in Botswana. There's a whole series of books. But anyway, he was, at that time, he was lecturing law, and he said, well, if you like the course and you like, advocating for someone, putting their best case forward, but you don't fancy doing it in a sort of corporate environment, have you thought about advertising? And if so, I can get you a cup of coffee with someone. So I had a cup of coffee with somebody. That didn't really come to anything, but it did pique my interest. And a couple of years later, I ended up in the bright lights of London.
Yeah, of course. So this was what city were you in where this was all taking place?
That was all in Edinburgh.
The greatest city in the world.
It is a good city. Do you know it well?
I only know it from going to the festival, a few times, and those are some of the fondest memories. And God willing, it will return real soon.
Yeah, I certainly miss it. No, it's a fantastic place. Obviously, if you're into the arts or music, or if you're a student, it's also a great place to live. So again, I had a brilliant time up there, and I would have, probably. I did apply to lots of agencies for jobs, and there wasn't much doing there. So, like a lot of people, came south, like Dick Whittington, to try and find fortune down here.
Yeah, great. So, it's good. Like you say, you were doing law, and one of the generalizable skills from law is a predisposition to hardcore verbal reasoning. And so that will put you in a good position for trying to sell into a client, won't it? Trying to make a case as to why this is the idea that you should be going with, amongst many other things.
That's right. I think you've got to assimilate lots of facts, and then also try and work out beyond just the facts how they will play in somebody else's mind. It's a persuasive profession, isn't it? And I suppose in lawyers' case, you're trying to persuade either a judge or a jury or both. And so you have to think about the human interpretation of the facts and how you can tell a story. All the best barristers and advocates and solicitors talk about storytelling, albeit in a very different context to the way that we do. So I do think that, and there's quite a few, you occasionally bump into a few other sort of refugees from that world that have also made that transition. And I do think there are a few sort of common traits that have been transplanted.
Yeah. So in the world of advertising, because you're listed as, just founder at Lucky Generals, and I was interested to know which of the disciplines in the industry you most strongly identify with. Are you account person? Are you a media planner or planner more generally? Where do you fit?
I'm a planner. So again, I had no idea what that was. I mean, when by this stage, I decided that I quite liked advertising, and I applied to the sort of, I suppose you might call it the graduate account program, or whatever you call it, sort of trainee scheme, as an account manager, because that's where the jobs were. And then I think halfway through that, a big agency called Abbott Mead Vickers, who you'll obviously know, they sort of said, well, actually, we think you'd be much better as this thing as a planner. I'd literally never heard of it before, so but I'm really grateful that they said that, because I think would be quite a terrible account manager. Yeah. So I think they were saving me from myself, saving the industry from me as well. So then I got into that. So that, and then strategy has been my sort of thing ever since.
So the interesting thing in the story of how you got into the industry is there's already been 2 examples of being in a fortunate position, being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right person. And so later on, we're going to hook back into that, because I know it's part of the mission going forwards. But let's dig into the concept of the book, because I was interested as soon as people were saying to me, "Oh, the idea of Lucky Generals it's this quote from Napoleon. He wanted all his generals to be lucky," and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds good and it sounds cool, but it probably doesn't really mean anything, And then you lay out this really compelling case for some people are luckier than others, and there's even a hint of the suggestion that there may be a biological predisposition to that, as in you're not too grounded in and stuck into a task that you can't notice serendipitous details floating past. Is that roughly an approximation of the idea?
Yes, I mean, I would say that that last thing might not be quite right, and I think it's a biological thing. I think it's probably something you can train. It's just by a mixture of nature, nurture, and all the rest of it. But yes, that's true. I mean, even then, it's funny because I have to say, and maybe this will spoil the narrative, but we didn't have any of this really in mind when we formed Lucky Generals. We frankly just liked the name. It was quite a cool, cool name from this Napoleon quote, and we liked the sound of it. And actually, Danny, my creative partner, who's one of the other founders, he had been in a band, or he wanted to form a band at school that would be called Lucky Generals, and it, for whatever reason, didn't quite come off. It ended up being something else, I think, ridiculous, called like Renegade or something pretentious like that.
Yeah.
So
a very bandy band name.
It was like a real sort of indie sort of band. But he'd always sort of had this in his mind that, it would be a great name for a band or something. And then, years later, that became the thing. So we didn't really interrogate it too much. And actually, it was more just sort of last year, just thinking, God, we've got a company that's called Lucky Generals, and we never talk about luck. And actually, I was sort of thinking, well, if someone like you had ever asked me why, what's the theory behind that, I would have really struggled. So I thought I'd better find out a little bit about luck and what it means and what it's all about.
Great. So I've read some of the material you sent over to get familiar with it. And why don't you, for the benefit of the tape, why don't you take us through this example you give with the newspaper and looking for photographs?
Yeah, so this is a great experiment done by a sort of renowned expert in this called Professor Richard Wiseman. And he's an expert in the psychology of luck, which again is a whole discipline I'd never even sort of heard of. But he does this experiment where he gets he asks people to self-identify. Are you generally a sort of a lucky kind of person, or would you describe yourself as being unlucky? And then he gets everybody to read a newspaper and to go through the newspaper and see if they can count the number of photographs in the newspaper. And what happens is that the people who get there, who say that they're lucky, manage to do it in a couple of seconds. And the people who say that they're unlucky tend to take a couple of minutes to do it. So it's quite a huge gap. And the reason is that people who describe themselves as lucky, quite often all that's really going on is that they're maybe more attuned to other stuff going on in the world. And what he's done on page 2 is add a little notice that says, you can stop counting now. There are 42 photographs in this newspaper. Just tell the interviewer, take your money and you can go. So if you're sort of the sort of person that might notice things beyond the thing you're supposed to be looking for, so you're supposed to be looking for photographs, but you notice this other thing that says what the answer is, then that sort of person obviously does it very quickly. Whereas the unlucky people are maybe the sort of people who are a bit more, in some ways, conscientious or heads down, focused on the task at hand. And he uses that to kind of make the point that that's all that luck often comes down to, is people who spot opportunities. The unlucky people might be just missing out on a whole bunch of stuff that is going on around them, and they're just not sort of clocking it. And I thought that was really interesting. All his research is done from a sort of individual point of view, and he sort of trains or does courses to teach people to be more alert to some of the things going on around them in their lives. And but I thought that could fit really well with organizations as well, because a lot of the time organizations, people in them are very focused on one thing at a time and miss out on all the cool and interesting stuff that goes on around them.
Yeah, you might. I mean, this is probably an imperfect example, but I might turn to the recent fortunes of the Arcadia Group and what's happened to them. And well, that's less a case of not noticing that the internet was an opportunity to be exploited for e-commerce. And I think the inside story appears to be that Sir Philip Green was kind of opposed to e-commerce and, really valued the in-store experience. But, I'm trying to hang a real-world example onto this of when a brand or an organization was so focused on one thing, they failed to notice something that would have been entirely more profitable for them to be focused on,
I think that's a great example of it, actually. And there's been lots of companies like that. I mean, Microsoft for a long time, Bill Gates even dismissed the internet and didn't think it was going to be a big thing, which seems sort of incredible now. Lots of businesses are heads down, focused on what they're doing, and it can become their undoing because they become sort of quite insular, and then something else might be happening either in culture or society or technology, and they are like the people that are just focusing on counting the photographs, and one of their competitors is perhaps sort of looking around them a little bit more and spotting that opportunity over there. There's a nice sort of phrase, I can't remember, I think it was a writer called Sally Kozlov said, you got to recognize luck when it's waving at you, which I quite like. This idea of luck, it's waving to all of us, but some of us are spotting it and doing something about it, and other people are just oblivious, carrying on with their work.
Yes, I reminded of a really bad example. Or no, it's not a bad example. It's just not from high culture. Where in Men in Black, the 1997 movie with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, they're taken for a marksmanship test, and all of the Air Force officers and all the Marines are all taking out the things that are obviously targets. And Will Smith takes out a little girl and he's like, "Why'd you do that?" And he says to them, "Well, she's out in a bad neighborhood in the middle of the night with an advanced quantum physics book. That doesn't look like the typical behavior for an 11-year-old girl. So I thought maybe that's the mark." So again, a crass example, but I put it in because I know that when we have this QA, someone will be able to put that overlay on there and it will look cool. But I think this hypothesis, not this hypothesis, what would you call it? Is it a model? Is it a theory that you've been developing? Or it's just an idea to be elaborated on, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an idea. The idea as a whole is that there is such a thing called luck, and that we should try and improve it and increase it. And then there's lots of different ideas within the book to try and sort of help you to do that.
Now, I'm interested in it because I know there's a lot of debate in our industry at the moment about the obsession with measuring and predicting results. And this is, I think, interesting to me because it's someone from the world of planning. And I'm not saying that planners aren't creative. They have to be, obviously, to get the best results. But you would expect it to be, an ECD or someone from that world, one of our rock star creatives, saying, "Oh, you need to leave space for the unpredictable." But it's interesting that it's coming from the planning department. And I don't know if any of this for you sort of hangs on to, the broader debate about brand building and sales activation, and the idea that you need to pursue advertising activity that has some risk, and you don't know what results it's going to produce maybe, and you don't know, what it's going to return.
Yeah, I think the whole approach of Western business, of which obviously advertising is a part, is to try and, first of all, deny that luck has any role to play. So that's kind of what most of us are taught. There's no such thing as luck. It's all about hard work, and just the harder you work, the luckier you get, is the kind of often used
this
sort of
weird
phrase.
Paradox.
Yeah. So it's kind of just keep on, working harder, and then but I feel like we can kind of see from our own eyes and our own experience that that's, obviously I'm a big believer in hard work, but that can't be the whole story. And I think it's sort of almost insulting to say to somebody, just work harder, and if you haven't succeeded, it's because you haven't worked hard enough. There are people all around the world who are maybe being born into circumstances where any amount of hard work is probably going to struggle to get them out of that situation. And to just say, well, you've got to make more of your luck, and hard work will get you anywhere, to somebody in very difficult circumstances isn't really helpful. And I think the same goes for brands. I think it's being mindful of, there's some things you can't change, but sometimes the lucky circumstances that you've been given, just by being conscious of it and mindful of it. It's like a lot of things in life. If you recognize, oh, hold on, that's quite lucky that I've got this gift, or that I've inherited this quality or this asset, then you're much more likely to use it wisely than if you're just oblivious to it all and you just carry on through life like there's no such thing as luck and you've just worked really hard for everything. Yeah. And I think it's getting that into businesses and getting to see luck as a friendly thing, as a good thing, as a positive, rather than something a bit scary that they've got to eradicate, like you say, by measuring it to death and trying to eradicate it from their processes.
Yeah, I remember someone associated with us on the finance side of things referring to it as chaos theory, and you have to really notice the use of the word chaos there, which we don't really associate with positive things. So it's like luck is almost like the positive opposite of chaos.
Yeah, and you can include. I think what's interesting, and really the whole point of the book, is that you can bring a little bit of order to it. People are scared by luck because it sounds like this kind of mystical force that you can't control and is out of your hands. And while some forms of it are impossible to control, none of us, or very few of us, could have done very much about the pandemic last year being an obvious example. But there are certain aspects that you can control, or you can sort of use to. It's like anything, a game. Apart from, there are games of pure chance, aren't they, where you can't really do much about the how the dice rolls.
Yes.
But there are other games that are not pure chance, and there's an element of chance because you get dealt a hand of cards. But after that point, it's how you deal with them and how you make the best of them. I think that's true of people and companies.
Yeah, I think the example of using the analogy of games is perfect, because there you have a scenario where a lot of the variables are controlled. So you've agreed to play the game, you've agreed roughly how long it lasts, you've agreed all the rules, and then there's this space where you allow the potential for good luck to play a role, and no pun intended on role there. And it's probably one of the biggest secrets of the creative work, which is that we basically depend on good luck almost 100%. So when we're sitting down to properly compose, you don't start with a plan. You start improvising. You randomly assemble sounds, and then you will hear the right one. You won't kind of pre-plan it and execute it. And so I think maybe is this something you're trying to bring to bring to the attention of our industry as a whole, to say that not only is luck a factor, but we actually all allocate a space for luck already, and we just haven't paid attention to it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. There's a lovely quote from Quincy Jones, who you will know is the probably the biggest and most amazing producer of all time, really. Yeah. And he's very process driven, so he's quite sort of scientific about how he lays tracks down and time lengths, and has sort of metrics in his head about how long something should be, or how many the ratios of different sort of musical metrics and all that kind of stuff. But he also realizes obviously he's got to leave room for magic, and he says that I like to leave 20 or 30% of the time for the Lord to walk through the room. And he's got that pinned up, that slogan on his recording studio, "Let the Lord walk through the room," which I think is a brilliant metaphor, expression for all creative people, isn't it? And that's sort of because it's different from saying just be lazy and chuck any old crap together and you don't have to work hard. No, you've got to work hard and you've got to know your stuff and know your discipline. But then, like you say, you've got to try some stuff out, and you don't probably know until you've tried some stuff out how it will pan out.
Exactly that, yeah. There's I heard a great podcast on BBC Sounds recently about composition. Always trying to keep an ear to the ground, on our particular method, and it was presenting what would you call it? An argument between the idea of kind of magical genius. Yeah. And the idea of random experimentation. And I like the fact that your theory, your idea, kind of falls in the middle, because what it sounds like you're suggesting is that, let's say, someone like Steve Jobs, for example, is often referred to as genius quite a lot, and like there's some extraterrestrial quality that people like that have that ordinary people could not gain access to. And so would you say that in fact, the case is that there's not some kind of magical special ability beyond the fact that they left their field of view open for other possibilities they hadn't considered?
Yeah, I think, he was obviously, unbelievably talented and, clearly was a very special and interesting sort of, person. But he often talked about luck. So he was very, very conscious of it. And he did a very famous speech, I think, at Stanford, where he talked about all the dots joining up, and that sometimes we don't recognize these dots joining up until afterwards. So, for instance, I think I'm right in saying that he dropped out of college. And one of the things he did when he dropped out of college was calligraphy, of all things.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was not particularly an obvious way to make your fortune, I don't suppose. But then it actually came in really useful when he designed the user interface that Apple became very famous for, this very intuitive, simple human interface. And it was all, and so in later years, he would look back on that as being an incredible stroke of luck that he couldn't have predicted at the time. But again, it's an example of he was somebody who was looking up and around him and taking inspiration from something as bizarre as calligraphy, rather than just having his head down in the, reading every computer software book that he could have read. So I think he is a good example for all of us. We probably can't quite all aspire to his success, but he was regularly, like a lot of things in luck come to, you've got to put yourself in positions to be lucky. And I think he did that. He tried out all sorts of different things. And in fact, actually, in his later years when he was running Apple, I think what's very interesting is that he deliberately used to try and kill off his own products. Because his attitude was, if I don't kill this product, somebody else is going to kill it. So he was almost always trying to provoke, in that case, bad luck, make his own bad luck so that he had to invent some good luck to overcome it. So I find someone like him really satisfying. And in our own small, humble way, like I say, we're not perhaps going to reach his dizzying heights, but I think everybody in their lives can take some benefits or take some lessons from that of just trying lots of different stuff out and pushing yourself to put yourself in situations where you might find some lucky connections.
So if you took one of the people in the newspaper experiment who identified as unlucky, and this may all be stuff you go into in the book, but if someone says, "Oh, I'm an unlucky person," and I know people who think like that, bless her soul, my own mother tends to think like that. What is really going on with them? What do you think?
I think it might be a mixture of there's sort of 3 or 4 things that could be going on there. I mean, the most, one is just the requirement to appreciate what you got. So a lot of people, there's a lovely quote from Roald Dahl from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So, which is again, we're getting all the populist references out now. They're not exactly crazily highbrow sort of academic books, but I
spoke to Rory Sutherland last week, so we've already done.
Oh, there you go, Kelly. He's I'm sure at a much more intelligent list of books to quote from. I'll do Charlie the Chocolate Factory, and it was really interesting. So he said, "We are all of us a great deal luckier than we realise," and I thought that's a really nice sort of attitude to life. We're all of us a great deal luckier than we realise. And I think a lot of people just don't, we tell a little story in our minds about, we've been unlucky and we haven't had advantages or the things that have gone wrong in our lives. But quite often we might have some amazing things that we perhaps don't appreciate enough. And it takes someone else to sort of spot, no, what about that thing you've got there, or this fact that you're brilliant at that? And that's one of the things that I think is really relevant to brands and businesses often forget about all these incredible assets that they're sitting on, or these amazing, qualities that they could call on, they've just told themselves that they're unlucky or they're not doing so well at the moment. So that's one thing. I think this newspaper analogy that I keep coming back to is kind of another one where a lot of people they just haven't spotted these opportunities when they've been waving at them. They've been heads down, and the chances have been around them, but perhaps they weren't looking up and putting themselves out into the outside world enough. And then maybe the third one is about bad luck and how we deal with bad luck. And a lot of, the most successful people in the world have really come through adversity and turned something that actually was bad into something good. And often, inevitably, the tendency for all of us, and I include myself lots of times, is when something bad happens, it's, your shoulders drop and you think, God, that was unlucky. But it's, if you can get over those humps, then that's a huge part of success, I think.
Yeah, I suppose part of it might come down to, how we are more sensitive to negative than positive. So, we feel the pain of losing a tenner more than we feel the gain of finding one. And I think do you think that has something, plays a part of some people who would say, "Oh, I'm just unlucky," is they're really carrying the pain with them every time of that, and it's overrepresented in their imagination?
Yeah, it's absolutely that. And it's trying to deal with the things that you can you control. You might not be able to do anything about the loss that you've just experienced, but to turn that on its head into a good thing, is a huge problem. Funny enough, I'm looking at a thing here. There's this sort of by coincidence is sitting on my desk now. There's a funny little character. Do you know who that is?
I know.
It looks a bit like Mickey Mouse, doesn't it? But it's not. It's a character called Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit, and it was the first big hit character that Walt Disney ever created. Cutting a long story short, he was going to make an absolute fortune out of this. It went down a treat. Universal signed him up for 25 movies, and he was in New York, just about to sign the deal, and his partner sort of cheated him out of the rights to it. So he ended up sitting on a train coming back to LA, gutted that he'd lost what he thought was going to be his fortune. But rather than sit on that train despondent or give up, which is what he did think about doing, he started sketching, and of course he started sketching something that then turned out to be Mickey Mouse. So the point is, if you can sort of take that moment, a lot of us would have just thought, oh God, I had that success in my hands, but typical me, I've experienced some bad luck there. We work in a tough business. You must get this a lot. We get a lot of knockbacks, and
yep.
Things go wrong all the time, and it's your ability to bounce back from them as much as anything else that ultimately informs how lucky you are.
Well, yeah, that's perfect, isn't it? Because there's two famous train examples. There's that one you just described, and there's of course J.K. Rowling. Rowling. Just happened. You're coming up with Harry Potter on the train from wherever it was, King's Cross to or something like that. And where I've thrown myself off now, I do that a lot. It was to do with the example you just gave. Oh yeah, so no, we're going to talk more about lucky generals. So at the moment in the industry, you guys are notorious, I might say primarily for having the Amazon account, because if there is a brand that defines this era that we're in, say this 3 to 5 years either side, or 3 years either side of where we are now, it's probably Amazon. The pandemic, home delivery has become the way we do everything. And but before that, 2014 to 20 was just the big explosion of, the influence of that company. And so other agencies might be saying, well, look at that, they've got this huge account. It's taken them from one level to the next. They must just be really fortunate in a way that we're not. But it sounded as if you were alluding there to the fact that there were some knockbacks along the way. Do you have any that you can, reveal the details of?
Oh, wow. We certainly had lots of knockbacks. Actually, first, before I talk about the knockbacks, even getting Amazon was quite lucky, because it was when we were only about a year old, and they're obviously a huge company, and we at that stage were tiny, and it seemed very unlikely that they would want to work with us. And at the time, it was just a project, and it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. But the reason that one of the reasons that they gave us it was that they've got a philosophy of that they call the 2 pizza rule. So they sort of said, no, we're actually looking for a small team. We're big, so we don't want another big organization. And in fact, we believe that if a team can't be fed on 2 pizzas, then it's too big. So actually, the fact that you're just a tiny little tin pot agency in Exmouth Market in London really appeals to us. So that was quite a fortunate, thing. And it started off small, and it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. But we weren't given this enormous thing. We weren't given the Super Bowl ad in our first year. We weren't given the Globals of Holiday, Christmas campaign in our first year. We've had to sort of seize that lucky opportunity and then run with it. So that would be an example. But along the way, we've had tons of knockbacks. We've had things that were brilliant. Our founding client was Paddy Power, and we did loads of great work with Paddy Power. But as is often the case, then there were a lot of changes in the management team, and we effectively got fired from that after doing brilliant work that we, had just felt that had really captured the brand and done really well for them. So that felt unfair. But rather than sit down and think, oh, woe is me, we can't go on, you just have to get on to the next pitch. And you know that's the stuff that happens in our world, isn't it? People move on, you lose pitches, you get fired by new clients because they want to do something different. And there's no point in getting down in the dumps about it. You just got to pick yourself up. Yeah,
it's there are 2 things that one has to manage. One is your own expectations all the time, and then the other is, as you say, your how you respond to bad things happening. So yeah, we had a similar, not on the same level, but a similar knockback a couple of years ago where we were pitching for all of the music for Iceland, the food retailer. And it's one of those where, there's 3 people and we go and do a big presentation. Oh, you're down to the final 2. And frankly, we really like you. And then, there's a big team and someone goes, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, that one, please. And then I think eventually that entire pitch became, what's the word? None of anyone's work got used because they hired a new agency straight away afterwards. So even whoever won will have eventually probably lost. But that's the kind of thing you got to get used to. And we can't be in this industry if we're going to stay down every time we fall. You need to get straight back up.
Yeah, 100%. It's so brutal. Even the very best agencies have got, probably less than 50% strike rate, and you get. People don't realize, I think, sometimes how much, agencies and other sort of brands like that put into some of these presentations. So, we're personally invested in it. Not just literally financially, but sort of emotionally, the amount of passion you put in. I remember once we got a meeting where the clients at the end of the meeting stood up and gave us a round of applause about how good it was. And then the next day told us that we hadn't got the business. So it was one of these, things where you just mustn't ever take for granted, any compliments, don't let anything go to your head. Don't let any complacency ever creep in, because you just got to concentrate on doing the right thing and winning it, and not giving yourself pats on the back anymore. You've got to be paranoid.
Is it a case of act as if every piece of new business is your founding client?
Yeah. I think you got to show that you really genuinely want it. So we're very fussy about what we pitch for. We'd say no to a lot of stuff because we've sort of worked out that we're not very good at faking it either. So it's not even like a particularly moral stance. I think it's just that we're just rubbish at it, and we'd perhaps occasionally tried to go through the motions because we might have had our heads turned by something that was, maybe it was a big brand that would, be worth a lot of money, or maybe it was a cool brand that we thought might look good on our, name list. But then we'd maybe sort of lost you have to have a human connection, I think, with the people that you're working with, and think, God, we're going to have a great fun here and do good work. And if you find yourself going through the motions, we certainly have found it's just hard to fake. You got to put your all into it.
Yeah. And so what's really interesting picking up on that is what are you now? 8 years into the project with Lucky Generals?
Just about, yeah. Sort of coming up to 8 in May. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm very new to the industry generally. I only really got into it 2017, but full time 18. So what am I saying? It's to say that to me, it looks like the age that you guys are at is kind of the age where you're a grown up agency. You're not a startup anymore. You've got serious accounts, serious clients. You've done some serious work. It's like the idea that at a certain age of adulthood, things stop being impressive. From like a prodigious perspective, people don't say, "Oh, well, that's good for your age." If you're sort of 43 and you've got a reasonable promotion, it's like, yeah, well, that's what you should be doing right now. So, what am I saying by that? Oh, yeah. So, who do you see at the moment coming up in the agency world? And who are playing the game well and appear to be onto a good thing?
We're very lucky in this country to have a thriving sort of startup culture. There's other agencies, which I think we're still probably, very much bracketed with, because although we are, been going for 7 years, there was really, I think we're still in the cohort of the likes of, who do we get pitched up against? Let me think. Droga 5,
yep.
For instance, is an obvious one, who I think are probably older than us actually, but they obviously, and they've certainly had an older pedigree in the States. But you've got Droga 5, you've got Uncommon, you've now got James Murphy's new outfit, James Murphy and David Golding's, Ian Hartfield's
new Commercial Arts.
Who else? But then you've got Perennial. I mean, one of the agencies I admire most is Mother, who are, I guess, maybe must be at least 20.
I think 1998 maybe, Mother.
That sounds about right, I think. So let's say 22, 23 years old. But, I still feel they feel really fresh and exciting, and they've rejuvenated. I mean, they're in some ways the ones I would most, because they've managed to keep themselves culturally relevant at the age. But, they've had ups and downs, but more often than not, at the top of their game and sort of doing really good work. So that's what you got to do. You got to, again, not be complacent. We still think of ourselves as a startup. You got to just keep that startup mentality. If you're technically not by, chronologically, you got to make yourself feel that way. The minute you start getting corporate or sort of growing up, we don't really ever want to grow up, I don't think.
Yeah, well, who does, flipping heck? But that was an interesting answer, because we know that you guys are on the top 30 in terms of, I think it's in terms of billings. And it's interesting that when you said, who do we often pitch up against and who do you compare yourself to, it was all startups. So it did come through that you still see yourselves as an agency where you can't rest on your laurels, and you've still got something to prove, And do you think that can tend to happen with agencies. They tend to get on a hot streak, or maybe they get bought up into a big holding company, and then things change. What happens?
Yeah, all those things really. The classic one is when the founders go, because this is a people business, isn't it? You're sort of dictated by the people who started the business and then almost kind of create it in their own likeness. And I think what you got to do as a founder is, we're not going anywhere, so that helps us enormously. But also you've got to make it not just about the three of you, because then when you go, that's what happens. Then the whole thing disappears in a sort of puff of smoke sort of thing. Whereas if you can try and create a business and a culture that is full of lots of people, interesting people at lots of different levels, then when you do eventually take your foot off or sort of head off into the sunset somehow, then you're leaving behind something that is still really thriving and exciting and all the rest of it.
No, that's
killer. That's the killer.
Yeah, and obviously the Golding and Murphy example, and Hartfield, of course, is a great one, because you could have said, and I think many people did say, you're running the most successful shop. Everyone loves your work, and you're number one on the leaderboard and all that stuff. Why are you getting out now to go and start again? What do you think the temptation is there?
I think they're just incredibly ambitious people who always, will feel that there's new things to be done and new ways to prove themselves. So I feel like while they're, a competitor, again, it's to be admired that they have decided to go again. And I think we should applaud entrepreneurs for trying to keep at it. And it would have been easy for them to sort of retire off into sort of luxury and not bother about such things again. But good on them.
I think that, you're right. That's the endearing move, isn't it? Because it could have been easily the time to retire early, take a payout, and then just sit back. And obviously, I really, really admire the spirit of things are still changing. We're still in the game. It's still worth playing for. And let's go back and start again and try the whole thing from scratch. Because I think you do get certainly we're a very young business. And I think once you've started and then grown a business, you kind of get addicted to the chase of going from 0 to 100 more than from 100 to 1,000.
Yeah. I think it's. I think the thing is to just recognize how much changes. If you try and do exactly the same as you did the first time around, then it probably either won't work and it probably won't be as satisfying again. So I'm sure they won't be trying to do that. I'm sure they will somehow try to do things a bit differently so that they don't just create another Adam and Eve. They'll be looking for ways to put a new spin on things. That's where the excitement comes from. For all of us, really, it's not standing still and trying to find new ways to sort of and new people as well to keep it all fresh.
Yeah. So on the work side of things, have you got anything that comes to mind from the last 12 months? Obviously, it's been a very interesting time to be making creative work. From the last 12 months that sticks in your mind, if I said, what's your favourite thing that you saw produced by any agency since 2020, what's the first thing that comes to your head?
So other agencies, I would say, I feel like Bodyform or Libresse, I can never remember which, I guess it's Bodyform in this country, isn't it? They've done a great body of work, including this year with the sort of womb stories work. But I feel like it's the latest in a succession of just brilliant work where they've taken taboos and made them wonderful, glorious, amazing, celebrated things. I feel like that's a brilliant body of work on a really difficult subject. That should be applauded, which I think is by Abbott Mead Vickers. So
I believe so. Yeah, we had Jules Chalkley at Ogilvy on the podcast a few months back, and he said the same thing. He said, "Womb Stories, amazing work," and I think I might say, perhaps controversially, that it's in a subject matter that could easily get sanctimonious or preachy, and it didn't do that. It got really it really dug into the subject matter and made some great film that I think would have stood up even without a commercial purpose, even if it wasn't trying to sell anything. I think it would be a great short film to be on like at our film festival. Do you know what I mean? It's just high quality stuff.
Definitely. And it's that sort of content that passes that, fuck, I wish I'd done that test. You know, when you see it, you really enjoy it and applaud it, but you also think, that's professionally annoying that someone else has come up with it, but good on them for doing it.
Yeah. So I am contractually obliged, I don't have a contract to do this, to talk about some musical stuff. And one thing that I thought might hook into the subject matter is it's not really a debate. The debate's kind of been, it's over, and I'm trying to revive it, such as I'm not really an influential person, but about synced music versus composed music. Because my suspicion is that the temptation around searching and syncing is because once you found it, it's baked. All you really have to do is, you can manipulate the stereo master, you can move the song around. But you've got a really powerful track, and New Commercial Arts have just done this. In fact, with Halifax, they just put Stand By Me, Oasis, on the new TVC. And it's a huge and very loud and very compelling sound. And so, I understand why there's a temptation to go and put that on it, because I suppose where this all hooks in is it's not leaving anything to chance or luck to say we are going to start with a blank page and end with a new track that no one's ever heard before. You kind of did this with Amazon and The Show Must Go On. It's not just taking the song, it was, rejuvenating it. So what do you think about that whole practice, really? It's not quite a question, more of a just throwing the ball into your court.
Yeah, I mean, it's as ever. So as a humble planner, I might not be the best person to answer, but I feel like, music is unbelievably important, and the research overwhelmingly, shows that music plays an enormous part in our enjoyment of advertising and is sort of underestimated as a factor. And so we should spend a lot of time on it and getting it right. And obviously it's horses for courses, and we've done both, so we've used both, freshly composed music and taken great songs and used them as tracks. But I think if you can, there's a lot to be said for composing or adapting to the idea, because then it fits like a glove rather than is just being stuck on the back of it. So yes, with that Amazon track, it just really worked. The original wouldn't have worked on that.
It would seem kind of melodramatic.
Yeah, and we needed to tell a story. It was a sort of it unfolded, so we couldn't have given the game away too early. There was quite a subtle hint of, the chords and the interplay of the music to sort of, you weren't immediately aware that the theme was the show must go on. That needed to become clear at the end of the ad when we realised what the story was and what the message was. So, and likewise, I think with our own Oasis track for the co-op at Christmas, we used Round Our Way, which is the old, lovely Oasis song, but we got a couple of kids to play it, which felt more authentic to something, that the co-op might do. It's all about grassroots community rather than just lifting the track and sticking it on.
I really liked that advert. I thought it was great. And I'm going to reveal my bitter Mancunian side here, perhaps, and say that one of the great things about that advert was it was one of the few that didn't feel like it was made in London. I hope that doesn't sound,
That's great. It's music to our ears, actually, because we want, the Co-op's a Manchester brand, and it's sort of heart. Obviously it's national, but it should have a sensibility that, we want to keep that Manchester sort of flame, that sort of Manx spirit sort of in its breast. So that's sort of really good that you say that. And those two kids were, sort of local kids that have, it just had a sort of a lovely homemade sort of, or certainly grassrootsy sort of community spirit to it, which was the whole point of it.
Yeah.
I remember sort of doing some research. There's a long time ago, but it was for a Hovis campaign that turned out to be really successful. But I learned a lesson early on in the music. So we had this idea of a little lad who buys a loaf of bread in a shop in Victorian times, and then he runs through history, through the Second World War, the First World War, Second World War, the World Cup, all the great events, the fireworks of the millennium, and comes back into modern day times into his mum's front room, puts a loaf of bread down. Are you back yet, love? Yeah, I'm back. Sort of, it's come back through 120 years worth of history. And anyway, when we researched that, we put A Town Called Malice on it because, we were at that stage, we were just researching it. We needed to put a soundtrack on. There was a sort of a Billy Elliot sort of vibe about it. So we thought that might play it quite nicely. It was researched brilliantly. Everyone absolutely loved it and they loved that soundtrack. And it would have been so easy to just say, yeah, well then this is a smash hit. Let's just stick with what we know on the soundtrack. And we decided not to, and we got some music composed that would fit perfectly that storyline and that could swell in the right places and die down, because you want different music when you're running through the Blitz and there's kind of, refugees sort of walking through the rubble. You want a different sort of tonality that you're just not going to get at the right moment from a song that you just plonked on top.
Yeah.
It turned out to be brilliant. It was the best thing. And I could see then, from a planning perspective, the magic that was added to it that I wouldn't have predicted, because it wasn't like The Town Called Malice was a bad track. It's a great track, but you got an extra 10, 20, 30% of emotion from having something that fit like a glove.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. And I really hope, I was going to say, I hope you can send us a link to it so we can have it on screen. But if we have done that, it'll have already happened. So that kind of thing is exactly what we're all about. It's exactly what the ethos of your book is all about. Make sure you don't get too focused on the trench that you're in so that you don't notice the opportunities that are potentially floating outside of it. The book, once again, is called Go Look Yourself by Andy Nairn. Andy, do you want to give it a bit of a plug now? Where's it out? When's it out? How much is it?
Well, it is out. It's physically out in June, so it's a little bit while away, but now it's available to pre-order now, and that's the way that all books are sold now. You have to try and get the pre-orders going so that Amazon's algorithms start cranking up into gear, sort of thing. So if you do want it, it'd be great if you could buy it now. And the other important thing I should say is that all the proceeds, all the royalties are going to an organisation called Commercial Break that helps working class kids get a lucky break into the industry. So if you're buying it, it's out on Amazon, Waterstones. They're the two most obvious places to get it, and the royalties will go to that very good cause.
That's actually, thanks for reminding me. I did say at the outset of this, we wanted to hook back into that, and that is a great circle to complete. So you got into this industry, you've succeeded in this industry on the basis of a couple of fortunate run-ins, knowing the right people at the right time. And so, just tell us a little bit about the organization where the proceeds are going there, because like you said, it's to make sure that people who ordinarily wouldn't have an easy route into this industry can get access.
Yeah, it's advertising and the creative industry is one of the most elite industries in the sense that it's got the lowest proportion of working class kids, and it's a real challenge, and is sort of related to all the other things that we are increasingly aware that we need to do. We've got a bad record on ethnic diversity, for instance, but that's very closely intertwined, certainly in this country, with class.
Yes.
So I just became very conscious last year that there's a lot of people that were a lot worse off than me. So I wanted to try and do something that could help. So I like the idea of a book that's all about luck, maybe help and bring a little bit of luck to people who haven't had that good fortune. And they're a great organisation. They're ex-agency, but they help find really good people from diverse backgrounds that wouldn't normally even consider getting into advertising, and then they introduce them to agencies and to music companies or brands or whoever, and then they help them flourish in those places as well. So I think it's a brilliant organisation, and I'm really rooting for them in all of this.
It's brilliant. Let's make sure that we can get people in. I've spoken to a load of people for this podcast, and they all say, well, not they all say, a lot of people say back in, let's say, the 80s, the 90s, there was a random falling into it that tended to happen. You got all kinds of weirdos coming in, and it was a great place to be. Let's see if we can make it a great place to be again. And, I found certainly as, someone who used to be a, self-obsessed, arrogant, like, I'm going to be an artist, I'm not going to work in advertising. It's a great industry to be part of. It's really fun. It's really exciting. So let's just try and get the enthusiasm back for the youngsters.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's got to be reflected in our work. That's how we will all collectively, look at the, platforms like TikTok or, platforms where young people or people of all ages, but from different backgrounds, are creating amazing work that we are just going to exclude ourselves from if we don't get them into our industry. And We just can't afford to let that happen. It's a commercial argument as much as an ethical one, although
No, you're absolutely right. That is one of the, like you say, one of the strong arguments for diversity that doesn't, as you say, hang on the ethical suppositions, is that you're just going to get a broader range of different styles of thinking that's just going to be more useful. And again, opens you up to that good fortune, things you didn't predict coming in and turning things for the better.
Yeah, definitely.
So
that will happen. We're in for it.
What are your predictions for this year in terms of good luck? Because one thing I forgot to get in there, I knew it was lingering the whole time, is that I actually have a suspicion that our Prime Minister kind of hinges on good luck for a lot of things. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but, he's certainly not a traditional, what would you say, conservative individual, you know what I mean? He does seem to play it fast and loose. So what do you see happening this year for us and for them?
Yeah, I have to say he's not my favourite politician.
You're in a broad camp there, yeah.
Exactly. So, but unfortunately, I do agree with you that he's very lucky.
Yeah,
and he does put himself into situations which increases luck. And I think at the moment it's actually a classic example where there's a dynamic whereby people tend to remember bad situations in terms of the last thing that happened in the process. So I think, to be fair, they do seem to be doing a good job of the vaccine program. And I suspect that that's the thing that he might get remembered for more than all the mistakes he made earlier.
Yeah, all of the European chaos.
Yeah, exactly. And he'll be able to kind of say, we got the vaccine done, quicker than anyone else, and it was worked like clockwork and all the rest of it, which, there's some sort of truth in that. But he's just infuriatingly lucky, if I'm honest.
It's like he's been riding the last 4 years by the seat of his pants, waiting for an opportunity like the vaccine rollout to just turn it all around.
Yeah, and he has been, he would, and even though it's annoying for me, he would back up all the, well, certainly quite a few of the different things in the book. I mean, he's turned bad luck, and the fact that he was ejected from government, wasn't he? And then came back in from the cold, and he turned that from a bad thing into a good thing. He saw the opportunities. I mean, he's the arch opportunist, isn't it? Where he was previously pre-Remain, but then spotted that opportunity. He didn't have his head down in the newspaper counting the photographs. He's always looking around, kind of thinking, how can I profit from this situation? And he's done that relatively astutely. But, hopefully other people will. We need to. There's an incredible amount of confidence you get, I guess, from the sort of background that he has had, and we could do with him and people like that having a bit less of that, and more other people having a little bit more share of their confidence.
But let's just take a moment to observe the wisdom in what you just said there, but not maybe the details, but the nature of it. So you started out by saying he's not my choice, but then giving perhaps even through gritted teeth, a positive appreciation. The message there is it's know your enemy, learn from them. If they're succeeding at something that you aren't, see what you can do to bring that into your own fold. If you just ignore people who you disagree with, and if you're just like, they're not really doing anything, they don't know what they're doing. So always make the argument, here's what they're doing right, even though I don't like them. And then maybe you can bring that into your toolkit and, and succeed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously it is a truism that we live in a very polarized world at the moment. And we are, as you say, very prone to ignoring people we don't like. And you do have to listen through gritted teeth and sort of appreciate that they've got good qualities. I don't think you can get to be Prime Minister just by being entirely lucky in the conventional sense. So he is probably the living body, and he was born with an enormous amount of privilege, for sure. But then lots of other people were, that haven't managed to exploit it as well as he has. So he has. So then you have to think about how has he done that, and he's been adept at keeping his eyes on, in his case, this sort of prize. At the end, God, I'm finding this hard to eke out the things that he's done well.
Well, you can see what was happening pre-pandemic. There was all this big kind of ambitious, I'm going to spend and get loads of infrastructure going. And then, like you say, it's the same thinking, but in a different way, but it's staying open to that opportunity. So like you say, that's the lesson to take from it. It's, stay flexible, be like water, and try and notice the opportunities where they are and take them.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's great. Andy, thanks for coming on. It's been really, really a great chat, and I'm very, very happy to have been able to speak to you about this. And I look forward to the book coming out. So best of luck with the sales.
Thank you very much. It's been really good to be on, and I really appreciate it. Cheers.